I think it's time to start. Before we go back to the meditation, I'd just like to comment on this particular slide here. Actually, we see this diagram in the middle. This is actually part of the shamatha diagram, which we'll be looking at tomorrow morning. But in the last session, we looked at the faults, and one fault, the first fault was laziness. And we saw there were 4 antidotes: faith, aspiration, enthusiasm or effort, and then pliancy. And pliancy, I mentioned, was this flexibility or serviceability of body and mind. And we really achieve this full pliancy of body and mind when we achieve shamatha. So this diagram here is the achievement of shamatha, showing this physical and mental pliancy. Physical pliancy here is the body is serviceable or pliant, meaning that it's said that when we achieve shamatha, our body feels light like cotton. And that's symbolized here by the person, the meditator flying through the sky. So that is physical pliancy. And then mental pliancy here, mental flexibility or serviceability, this means that we can turn our mind to whatever we want. And so we see this here, the elephant is the mind, the meditator's on the back of the elephant of the mind, so that has complete control over the elephant of the mind. So that is mental pliancy. And so these two together here symbolizing then the actual achievement of shamatha. So I thought I'd just mention that in case you're wondering what's going on here with the person flying through the sky and riding on the elephant. So again, we'll begin with a meditation. So we'll go back to the practice we did in the last session. That is the breath practice, mindfulness of breathing, focusing on the area of the abdomen. Again, this is very conducive for improving stability of attention, but without, of course, losing relaxation, keeping that as the basis. So we'll do that practice again. I'll give a little bit less guiding. And so remember again, if you find that you are heavily distracted in this practice and you find that counting the breath is helpful to stabilize your attention, then you can bring it in. If you don't find it helpful, then just leave it out. So let's do that practice again. So if you'd like to find a nice comfortable posture, let's begin. We begin with preparing the body. So establishing a good posture, keeping the back straight, and at the same time allow the entire body to become completely relaxed. Using the out breath to relax and release any tightness or tension in any part of the body. And then keeping the body as still as possible, avoiding any unnecessary movement. The body relaxed, still, and vigilant. Allowing the breathing to flow naturally and effortlessly. And with each out breath, letting go of any thoughts that may have arisen, happily releasing them. And simply allowing the mind to come to rest. Resting in the stillness of the present moment. And now, whilst maintaining that relaxed body and mind, bring your attention to the sensations of the breath in the area of the abdomen. And maintaining that ongoing flow of mindfulness of the sensations of the breath throughout the entire cycle of each in and out breath. And to help maintain a balanced mind, a mind that is relaxed and focused, then you can use the out breath as an opportunity to relax and release any tightness or tension. And you can use each in breath as an opportunity to arouse and refresh your focus, to sharpen your focus on the breath. And if you're finding that you're constantly becoming distracted, and if you find it helpful, then you might like to introduce some counting of the breath to help stabilize your attention. so we can bring the meditation to a close. So let's have a look at what we're going to cover in this session. So once again, we'll start with a short review, some of the earlier topics. Then we'll look at this Shavasana posture, how we can use that for meditation. Then we're going to look at the actual practice, the mindfulness of breathing using this Shavasana posture. We'll do a guided meditation with that, some tips for that practice, Q&A, and then a little bit of a summary of some of the main points from today and some of the points that we'll be covering in tomorrow's sessions. So again, quoting from Attention Revolution from Alan Wallace, particularly this idea of relaxation. He says, the cultivation of shamatha involves balancing the mind. And that includes balancing the effort exerted in practice with relaxation. And before we can develop attentional stability, we first need to learn to relax. So we saw there the importance of relaxation as the basis for cultivating stability and clarity, a stable and clear attention. And we saw there the analogy of the tree, that first we need to really sink these deep roots of relaxation to be able to support the trunk of stability. And the stronger the trunk of stability, the higher the foliage and leaves of clarity can grow. So each one is the basis of the next. And the importance of relaxation, I really can't overemphasize this enough. In my own experience and talking to many people, that this is where we often fall down in our practice, is that we tend to bring a lot of agitation and tension into practice basically from our daily life. And then we apply that tension, because that's what you do in daily life. When we focus on any activity, we do that with quite a lot of tension. And we bring that tension into meditation. And then, of course, it doesn't work very well, and we feel like we didn't clamp down hard enough, and we keep pushing, and we have all sorts of problems in meditation. So to really highlight the importance of this basis of relaxation here, I'd like to read from Alan Wallace's Attention Evolution. On page 14, he talks about this based on his own experience. He says, thus, our practice of mindfulness of breathing consists of prolonging our awareness of our breath. While this requires an alert mind, such concentration should not be tense, but rather balanced. When we discover that we've become distracted from the meditation object, it may feel natural to clamp down more forcefully, tightly concentrating the mind. You can see this in the facial expressions of people who try to concentrate in this way. Their lips become pursed, their eyebrows draw together, and their foreheads become furled with wrinkles. They're becoming concentrated, but like orange juice, most of the fluidity is being drained from their minds. If you want to concentrate for a short time and don't mind the side effects of tension and fatigue, you can follow the above strategy. But if you want to follow the path of shamatha, you'll need an alternative. I had to discover this fact through experience. During my first extended shamatha retreat, I was filled with enthusiasm. I wanted to take full advantage of the rare opportunity that was before me, for I was meditating in India under the guidance of the Dalai Lama. I had no financial worries and my material needs were easily met. All I had to do was put the instructions into practice. I threw myself into this training with all my might. Each morning I would rise at 3:30, except once I slept in until 3:45 and got upset with myself for slacking off. Enthusiastic I was, but so uptight. The Tibetan manuals on shamatha meditation that I had studied over the years stated that the type of attention needed when one began such practice was, quote, highly focused. So I tried as hard as I could to keep my mind from wandering. Within a matter of a few weeks, devoting many hours each day to meditation, I could sustain my attention on my chosen object for up to half an hour. I was elated by making such fast progress. As the weeks went by, however, I found myself becoming more and more fatigued. I was draining myself both physically and mentally. My joy in the practice was diminishing accordingly, and I felt my attention was not developing any further. What was wrong? I was trying too hard. The cultivation of shamatha involves balancing the mind, and that includes balancing the effort exerted in practice with relaxation. I think this points to a cultural difference between traditional Tibetans living in the highlands of Tibet and modern people leading fast-paced lives, their senses constantly bombarded by telephones, email, the media, and noise. Years of such existence conditioned the nervous system and mind in ways that might have been considered torture in rural Tibet. One traditional Tibetan doctor whom I know once commented on people living in the West. So now he's quoting the Tibetan doctor who says, "From the perspective of Tibetan medicine, you are all suffering from nervous disorders. But given how ill you are coping remarkably well. Whether we dwell in Boston, Buenos Aires, Berlin, or Beijing, our minds are conditioned to be more high-strung and engaged in compulsive thinking than the minds of Tibetan nomads and farmers living a century ago. So when Tibetan meditation manuals advise beginners to focus their attention firmly, the instructions are aimed at a very different reader than the average city dweller in the 21st century. Before we can develop attentional stability, we first need to learn to relax." And again, I can't overemphasize this enough based on my own experience and talking to many, many people. Relax, relax, relax. The deeper the relaxation, the more sustainable the stability and clarity. So let's go now to the Shavasana posture. Of course, this is the corpse posture we have in yoga tradition. And so again, we'll begin with quoting Attention Revolution, where Alan Wallace says, "Although Buddhism generally encourages cross-legged meditation, the Buddha encouraged his followers to practice in any of four postures: walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. Any of these positions is perfectly suitable. If you tend toward excitation, you may find lying down especially helpful for releasing the tightness and restlessness of the body and mind. But if you are more prone to laxity, in other words, dullness, you may simply fall asleep whenever you lie down. So it may be necessary for you to be upright when meditating." And so here again, I'd like to read a little bit more from Attention Revolution, but before I do that, just a few comments, is that, as he mentioned, this Shavasana posture is very good for relaxation. So much so that if you're the sort of person who's really highly strung, very agitated, and you find sitting upright in meditation, you can't really relax, or it's very difficult to relax the body, then you may find that using this Shavasana posture, the corpse posture, may be the optimal posture for you for meditation in general, to do most of your meditation in this posture. Also, this posture can be very helpful if you're fatigued, physically tired, or injured, or sick, and you still want to meditate. And in fact, this is what I tend to do if I'm in a sort of a more retreat scenario situation, meditating a number of sessions during the day, then generally toward the end of the day, the last couple of sessions, I'll meditate using the Shavasana posture. And I find it very, very helpful. You can stay very relaxed and surprisingly alert as well. And also, as we're going to see now, quoting from Attention Revolution, we can use this as a transition to sleep. So let's see what Alan Wallace has to say about this. And this is on page 19. It talks about the Shavasana posture. So again, beginning what we've covered here at this top, he says, although Buddhism generally encourages cross-legged meditation, the Buddha encouraged his followers to practice in any of four postures: walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. Any of these positions is perfectly suitable. Not everyone living in the modern world has the same type of mind or nervous system. If you tend toward excitation, you may find lying down especially helpful for releasing the tightness and restlessness of your body and mind. But if you're more prone to laxity, you may simply fall asleep whenever you lie down. So it may be necessary for you to be upright when meditating. So we saw that here in the slide already. And then he goes on to say, lying down can also be very useful for meditation if you are physically tired but not yet ready for bed. In this case, you may not be able to rouse yourself to sit upright in a posture of vigilance, but the prospect of lying down for a while may be inviting. Surrender your body's need to rest and use the supine position to calm the mind as well. This likely will be much more refreshing and soothing than watching television or reading a newspaper. The supine posture may be your only option if you're ill, injured, or frail. It may be especially useful for meditation by those in hospitals, senior care facilities, and hospices. And then he goes on to say, mindfulness of breathing is great for preparing your mind for mental training, but it can also help you fall asleep. If you suffer from insomnia, the above method can help release tension in your body and mind when you go to bed at night. And if you wake up in the middle of the night and have a hard time falling back to sleep, mindfulness of breathing can help you disengage from the thoughts that flood the mind. According to recent studies, about 80% of Americans are chronically sleep deprived. So even if all this practice does is help you catch up on your sleep, that's worth a good deal. And so that's what we're going to be doing now. So we're going to do a mindfulness of breathing, and the emphasis again will be relaxation. So the object that we're going to focus on is the sensations of the breath throughout the body, anywhere in the body. So here the Shavasana posture, and we'll go through all this practice, and then we'll, if you hopefully have a bed nearby or a cushion or somewhere you can lie down to do this practice, it would be very helpful. But let's explain the practice first. The posture is you're lying flat on your back, you have your feet slightly apart, the arms are slightly away from the body, and the palms facing upwards. And it's good to have a little cushion under your head. And also you could have it under your knees, because sometimes some people find that when they're lying flat on their back like that, their knees are sort of hyperextending a little bit and a little bit painful. So then you can put a little cushion under your knees so your knees are a little bit bent. So that's fine as well. And so again, the object here is we are focusing on the sensations of the breath throughout the body. Again, the emphasis is on relaxation. So really relaxing on every out breath. Now here with the eyes, so again, as per normal, slightly open or lightly closed. So again, for this particular practice, I would recommend for those of you who naturally tend toward dullness and drowsiness, then you probably find that lying down in Shavasana with the eyes closed, you're just going to fall asleep. So then I would suggest to have the eyes slightly open. Now, of course, if we're lying down in a room and it's evening time particularly, and we have the light on, that's going to be very bright. So what I would recommend is, if it's during the daytime, of course, have no lights on in the ceiling, or if you can, dim the lights in the evening, or you can even switch them off if you prefer. So again, just play with the eyes, if you really find that you're the sort of person you easily get drowsy with eyes closed, then do this practice with the eyes slightly open and make sure there's no bright lights in the ceiling. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit intense. And again, of course, we're using the bare attention to focus simply on the sensations of the breath throughout the body. So we're not visualizing or imagining anything. And again, just allowing the breathing to flow naturally, not trying to regulate the breath in any way. And again, the emphasis is on relaxation. So particularly in this practice here, on each out breath, just really releasing and relaxing any tightness or tension. And on each out breath, releasing any thoughts that may have arisen in the mind. So again, we are emphasizing the relaxation, but don't allow yourself to just drift into dullness and drowsiness. So just maintain that level of clarity that you begin the meditation practice with. So that's the practice we're going to do now. So again, if you have the opportunity to do this practice in the Shavasana posture, that would be great. So if you'd like to, if you have nearby where you are, a bed or a cushion or something, or a mattress or something you can lie on, so you can go into that posture right now. So I'll give you a little bit of time to do that before we start the meditation. So just again, when we enter into that posture, so again, we're lying flat on our back. The feet are slightly apart. The arms are slightly away from the body, the palms facing upwards. Again, a small cushion under the head is usually helpful. And then maybe even something under your knees if you prefer to have the knees slightly bent. And if you're in a room that's quite cold, it may be useful also to have some sort of shawl or blanket over you. You can do that as well. So let's begin the practice then. Again, as an act of loving kindness for yourself, allow your awareness to descend into the body and simply become aware of sensations throughout the body. And using the out breath to relax and release any tightness or tension in any part of the body. And bringing your awareness to the area of your face, and softening and relaxing all the muscles in the face. Mouth and jaw, soft and relaxed. And all the muscles around the eyes, soft and relaxed. And in this way, allowing the entire body to become completely relaxed, completely at ease. And relaxing more deeply with each out breath. And with each out breath, letting go, releasing all activities of the mind, releasing all hopes, fears, desires, and so forth. And simply allowing the mind to come to rest. Not doing anything at all. Simply being present. And from that stillness, start to become aware of the sensations of the breath throughout the body. Remaining relaxed and alert, maintaining an ongoing flow of mindfulness of the sensations of the breath. And if you find yourself falling into dullness or drowsiness, then use the in-breath as an opportunity to arouse and refresh your focus, to sharpen your focus on the breath. So relaxing and releasing on the out breath and sharpening the focus on the in breath. And so we can bring the meditation to a close. Now, a good way to get up from the Shavasana posture is to first bend your left knee and then roll over onto your right side. And then from there, use your hands to help push you into a seated upright position. So that's a good way to get up from the Shavasana position from meditation. Okay, so just some tips for this particular practice, some helpful tips or you might find helpful. So again, to adjust the lighting in your room to suit, particularly, of course, if you're lying down, you have ceiling lights that are quite bright, so you might like to dim them or even switch them off. Myself personally, when I do Shavasana posture, I like completely dark. I find that quite helpful. I don't really have so much of a problem to drowsiness or dullness, so actually I prefer the room completely dark or quite dark, dim. And again, if you're in a room where it's a little bit cold, you might like to put a shawl or blanket over you, over the body. As we saw, as I mentioned earlier, have a little cushion under your head, not too big a cushion because that'll sort of tilt the neck a little bit too much. And again, you can put a cushion under the knees if they're hyperextending, so you can have the knees a little bit bent. And when you have your arms to the side or away from the body, palms facing upwards, that helps to keep the shoulders open as well. And as I just mentioned now, how to get up from the Shavasana posture. Now, initially, when you use this posture, if you're only just beginning to use it now, you may find, of course, that the first few times you do it, you get very drowsy. And that's because we have this mental association that horizontal body means sleep. So generally, that's what we do when the body's horizontal, we sleep. But if we use this posture only for meditation, then very quickly we can build up a new mental association that this particular posture doesn't mean sleep, it means to meditate. And so then you can develop that mental association and you can use this. So when to use this posture? Um, as I mentioned, for some people, it could be actually the best posture to use in your as your normal meditation posture, particularly for those who are extremely agitated and find it quite difficult to relax sitting upright. Then you may find that lying down in the Shavasana posture is very helpful for relaxation. But again, if you're a person that naturally gets very sleepy and drowsy, to use the Shavasana as your normal meditation posture, probably not a good idea. You'll just fall asleep. But again, if you have fatigue and you want to meditate, as I mentioned, that's what I tend to do in a retreat scenario. Towards the end of the day, I tend to use the Shavasana posture. Can have the body is a bit fatigued or tired from the day's activity, sitting upright, but then lying down, very restful, but at the same time can keep the mind quite alert. And to use, as we saw in Alan Wallace's quote from his book, we can use this as a transition for sleep. So therefore, what we can do here, and we can do this actually every night, is that when we go to bed, is to go into the Shavasana posture. And then, as we did in this meditation here, then really just emphasize relaxation. So on every out breath, relaxing any tension in the body and releasing any thoughts in the mind. Because often what can happen is after a very stressful, hectic day, we may still have a lot of tension in the body, a lot of things churning over in our mind. We go to bed, and of course, it's very difficult to fall asleep with tension in the body and thoughts churning in the mind. So then we can use this posture. Go into the Shavasana posture on every out breath, releasing any tension in the body, on every out breath, releasing any thoughts in the mind. And then to do this, as long as you can maintain some alertness, when you start to get drowsy, then you mentally note that the meditation is now finished, and then physically you move out of this posture into whatever posture you use for sleep. And you can do the same in the middle of the night if you happen to wake up, because sometimes we wake up in the middle of the night and then have a hard time going back to sleep, and we get all stressed because we think, oh, I have to sleep because I've got to work tomorrow. And of course we toss and turn and don't sleep. So similarly, if we wake up in the middle of the night and don't immediately go back to sleep, go into the Shavasana posture, releasing any tension in the body, releasing any thoughts in the mind. And I think you'll find you'll fall asleep quite quickly. And even if you don't, because you're so relaxed, you're still getting a lot of the benefits of sleep anyway. So that's a few helpful tips for the Shavasana meditation. So what I'd really recommend there is to do this a number of times so you get comfortable with using this posture for meditation, and have that in your toolbox, this Shavasana posture, because you never know, even if you don't normally use it, I'm sure there'll be occasions where it will come very handy. So if you have learned how to meditate in the Shavasana posture, then we can bring it in if and when it's useful and when we need it. So that's some useful tips or helpful tips. So here we have a bit of time for question answer before we slowly wrap up this last session. So if you have any questions, again, switch on the webcam and the mic and ask away. Tracy, is it?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure, no problems.
Great. So I have this habit of holding so much tension right in my throat. And growing up, like that's where I always get sick. Like this is where everything just builds up. And occasionally it will go away when I'm meditating, but it's almost always there. And I feel like my entire meditation then is just trying to relax. And then the more I try to relax, the more it gets. And so I don't really quite know where to go with it.
Yeah. Well, again, maybe it would be good to, have you experimented with using the Shavasana posture for meditation?
I do, and that helps the most.
Right.
And but it's still there, and it seems to go away a little bit more often when I'm in the Shavasana. I've found that if my mind starts wandering and it just really goes off in a thought, then it releases, and then I really gradually try to bring my focus back in, just really, really, really slowly, and that works sometimes. But I don't know too, like if because it's been happening so much that my body almost just automatically goes into it now as habit.
Yeah. It may be actually useful to find someone who is very skillful at doing some sort of body work, whether it be in the form of yoga or Tai Chi or one of the to work with the body, because you may find that working directly in the body with the energies in the body, that may be more helpful in terms of releasing that. So that's something I think that can be worthwhile. Also, you may find, particularly what we're going to be doing in the next retreat, the next shamatha retreat in 3 weeks' time, is we're going to be using the mind as the object. And so there we're going to be observing the mind, because often a lot of these blockages in the body come from something that's happening in the mind. And so then it can be very helpful with that practice. Of course, we're observing the mind and we're seeing what's going on in the mind. And not only to notice that certain mental events are really creating that or causing that or strengthening that tension in the throat, but also then you may find that in that sort of practice, we are developing the ability to just observe thoughts and emotions and memories and so forth arising and passing. And that is very much a sort of a healing practice. And you may find that developing that ability can also release this, because by releasing, not getting caught up or contracting around thoughts or memories or emotions, you may find that this just naturally then releases as well. So that, I think, could be something useful. But I certainly would try to find someone, you know, outside the context of meditation, who's very good at doing some sort of body work, particularly for releasing blockages and so forth. Again, you know, there's many different modalities of body work, but that, I think, you may find helpful, but also then what we're going to be doing in the next retreat. But again, also the Shavasana posture, I think, is helpful. And one last comment is that when this comes up, or anything like this comes up, what we tend to do is we tend to contract around that, because we go, oh, not that again. I don't want that. I want that to go away. And of course, that just intensifies it. So as much as possible, to be okay that it's there, that to, when it arises, go, okay, it's there. I'm not dying, you know. And even sometimes if you can get to the point of welcoming it and going, oh, hello, nice to see you again. Nice to see you again. Because often these sorts of blockages and tension in the body are much magnified because of our aversion to them. We have something come up and we go, oh no, go away, go away, go away. And that aversion just really magnifies everything. So one thing definitely would be to really be okay that it's there. Is just go, okay, doesn't matter. It'll pass, doesn't matter. And not wanting it to go away, or hoping that it goes away, or fearing that it doesn't go away. So if we can let go of all of that, at least we won't amplify or magnify it. So that's another thing we can do. And that ability also will come a little bit from what we're going to be doing in the retreat, the next shamatha retreat in 3 weeks' time. So that's a few things that maybe you might like to look at.
Great. Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Thanks, Tracy.
Can I also,
Yeah.
if any of the participants have any like suggestions on body work, would you maybe throw something in the comments if you feel comfortable?
There you
I
go.
mean, I
So if
know
there's anyone else who knows, has some good advice on that, you can throw it in the chat box there. Okay. Thanks, Tracy. Any more questions? We've still got time for another 1 or 2 questions, if anyone has. Otherwise, I just want to make a short summary of some of the main points from today. So if there's no more questions, I might just go straight to that. Okay, seems like there's no more question. Oh, yes, question?
Yes. I have a question about, which is again more on the theoretical side, because the objects of attention that you mentioned earlier on, there's no reference to sound.
Yeah.
Which in some traditions, or in the MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction program, is one of the objects of attention. So I wondered, is there a reason why it's not there, or?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that briefly in an earlier session today, that in the meditation texts, it does talk about, you know, if you can't really focus on the breath and so forth, you can use a sense object. And so often in the text, they talk about, you know, find a stick or a pebble or something, put it down and look at it. But also we can talk about repetitive sound and so forth, chanting a mantra and so forth. And of course, any object, any sensory object can be helpful in terms of improving mindfulness and so forth. But what you find is that a sense object, such as a sound or a visual object, is a little bit limited in how deep we can go in this practice. That it will only be able to take us so far, And then we'll have to go further into the practice. We'll need to move on to a more subtle object like the breath, or a mental object, or a mental image. So yes, you can use those sorts of things, and focusing on any sort of sense object, of course, is helpful for mindfulness. But as an object, an effective object to really go very deep into this practice, these sort of sensory objects are a little bit limited in how far they can take us. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And related to that, but it's maybe a little bit more specific. For people who have been traumatized, it may be difficult to start with the breath, and I'm finding it for myself when I'm very, very agitated. I sometimes think, God, it's so hard, the breath. So I just focus on the hand or on the feet. And so you're probably going to give me the same answer. It's, not going to go so deep as the others, but it can be very helpful.
Sure, absolutely. And so we can use all of these sorts of things to help us to get into the practice. And what you might also find helpful, again, this is something that's going to come in the next retreat we're going to do in 3 weeks, is that we're going to do 2 sort of similar practices. One is observing the mind, observing thoughts and emotions and so forth. And of course, many people find that very challenging. But the related practice is one of simply just resting in awareness. And I think this can be very helpful for these sorts of things and many other things, is that because the resting in awareness is you are turning the mind in on itself and just knowing that we're aware, and we're not really interested in any appearances. So we're not focusing on any appearances at all. And also, so that's one thing, is we're not focusing on any appearances. And secondly is that what we notice is that awareness is completely still and completely open and spacious. And so if we can just rest in that state, that gives us a very good basis to be able to face any sort of difficulties or trauma in our life. Because now, generally what happens is our mind is quite tight and constricted. And so something comes up and we contract around it. And it really overwhelms us because our mind is very tight and small. So if we can just develop this ability to rest in awareness, our mind will be completely open and spacious. And so then our mind is vast, which means whatever appears in that vast openness is not so big or threatening anymore. And so we can hold a lot of this stuff much more easily from that basis, and not even identify with what's coming up. It's just an appearance. Because now what we do is we contract around appearances, we identify with them, and of course get caught up in aversion and fear, anxiety, and so forth. But if we can just simply be present with those appearances, with this open, spacious mind, then they won't appear so big anymore. And also where it's more difficult to contract around them and identify with them, because they're just appearances, just appearing there in that empty space. And so you'll find that that is going to be also very helpful for this sort of thing. But that's coming in the next retreat.
Glad it will come up. Thank you so much, Glenn.
Thank you. Okay, just to wrap up, to finish today, just to summarize a few of the points, main points we covered today and what we're going to be looking at tomorrow. So in the shamatha training, the preparation, which here is about the framework, having an effective framework for meditation. Because what often we do is we just sort of add meditation to whatever our life is now. And it often is not very effective. We often have to set up our life in such a way to support this, to make it much more effective. And so that's what this preparation is, a framework. And how to do that, we're going to look at in session 7, which is the second last session tomorrow. Then we looked in today at the preparation to prepare body, speech, and mind at the beginning of the session. In the actual meditation, we looked at these 3 qualities to cultivate in the shamatha practice. The objects we can use, the recommended one, the breath, mind, awareness. Of course, here in this weekend, we're using the breath. We looked already at the full body and the abdomen practice. And tomorrow we're going to look at something similar to the full body, focusing on the rhythm of the breath, and also using the nostrils, focusing at the entrance of the nostrils. Tools, of course, 2 tools of mindfulness introspection. Mindfulness to hold the object, introspection is the quality control. We looked at the 5 faults and 8 antidotes. Integrating all this meditation into daily life, of course, we'll be looking at in the last session tomorrow. And then tomorrow morning in the first session, we're also going to look at the stages of progress in this practice. So we're going to be using these 2 charts that I think you should all have access to, or hopefully maybe even printed out. And so we're going to look at that in the tomorrow morning session, the first session, particularly the first 4 stages we're going to look at, because they're the first 4 stages, of course, what's relevant for us at our level, and some practical advice about how to move through those stages and how to know where we are in the shamatha practice, how far we've gone in the practice. So that's some of the things that we have been covered today and we'll be looking at tomorrow. So that's it for today. And that's it for the time. Time's up. So let's leave it there. And so again, tomorrow then, first session, we're going to be focusing on the object being the rhythm of the breath. So like the full body breath practice, that's very good for relaxation. And it's also good as a sort of a bit of an anchor for other practices. And I'll talk more about that tomorrow. And again, first session will start at 9 o'clock at the Central European summertime. So until then, enjoy your evening and we'll see you same time tomorrow. So bye for now.